We are less than a week away from the start of the 2024 NFL Draft. Does anybody really know who's going to be the second quarterback selected? That plus a whole lot more comes up on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for April 22nd, 2024.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. As always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, we definitely appreciate that. The show grows each and every day, and that's because of you, Raider Nation, and my man, Ari. Ari does a fantastic job each and every day, making sure we're on YouTube, we're looking good, we're sounding good. We definitely want to shout him out. You can check him out on Twitter at Ari Producers. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line 707-654-4693. Your calls and texts will come up in segment number 3 of today's show. Segment number 2, as we're really starting to, lock in on what's going to happen on Thursday, the start of the NFL draft. I'm going to start to focus in on what I believe the Raiders need to be focusing on with their first pick, which is number 13 overall. As of right now, their first round pick, wherever they select, I'm going to let you know what I believe they need to focus in on Thursday to come away with a successful day one. That's coming up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, as I always do. And we'll jump right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. I'll tell you a lot more about them later on in the show, but I'm sure you could tell if you're checking us out on YouTube or actually listen to last week's show, I'm here live in Detroit. And this is the site of the 2024 NFL Draft. I arrived on Sunday. Very long day traveling. I left Las Vegas. My first flight was at 5:55. I went from Vegas to San Diego to St. Louis, then Detroit. So as you can imagine, a very long day, but hey, we're here now. I'm excited to be boots on the ground, be here ready to rock and roll, and everything will really get ramped up on Wednesday. That's when stuff really starts cooking. So the first couple of days will kind of be, low and slow, checking out a few sights and sounds around town, seeing what I could see, pick up what I could pick up, but really everything is going to get cooking on Wednesday. But because of my radio shows, both Raider Nation Radio 920 Unnecessary Roughness and also ESPN's Game Night, I had to travel early or else I was going to miss a show. So I didn't want to do that. So I hopped into the in the Bird and got to the Airbnb a couple days early. And again, sitting here in this Airbnb right now, pretty cool little setup. Got a couple bedrooms here. One's a bedroom to actually sleep in. The other one's what I call the lab, and that's where I'm at right now. So the next couple of days, this show will generate from the lab. The other days, it'll come generated from the downtown where they're actually having the site of the NFL draft. So should be fun this next week here in Detroit, and everything will be status quo as we do here on the Locked On Raiders podcast, as we always do. So with that being said, let's jump into the latest and the greatest. And this really rolled out on Friday. And it was funny. I was filling in on ESPN Radio instead of doing my show Game Night. I was co-hosting on Carlin vs. Joe with Chris Carlin. I was in for Joe Fortenbaugh. And the report came out about, and there's been a lot of conversations back and forth about what's going to go on at number 2 with the Commanders. Jayden Daniels and his camp wasn't so thrilled when it came to the fact that the Commanders were speed dating and had all 4 quarterbacks in there. Jayden Daniels, Drake May, Michael Penix, and J.J. McCarthy all visited the organization. And so his camp wasn't real happy and thrilled about that. I know as of late, they've kind of put out a few tweets where it's basically, hey, everything is all good. But there's still a little something. I always like to believe in there where there's smoke, there's some fire. And I do believe that there's a little bit of smoke going on with Jayden Daniels and the Commanders. And is he going to be that guy? Could they take Drake May? Could they go in another direction? Could they trade the pick? I don't think that they're going to trade, but I'm not 100% sold that they're going to take Jayden Daniels. And honestly, as I mentioned before on this show, I do think that there's a path where the Raiders, if they really wanted to, could get up to the number 3 spot and then ask Jayden Daniels to, hey, do your magic, right? Go ahead and use your leverage if you have it to say, I don't want to go there. I'd rather go there. And the trade for the Raiders to get Jayden Daniels, from 3 to 2 is a lot easier than 13 to 2. But that's a conversation for a different day. But this is what Adam Schefter had to say on the Pat McAfee show, when basically Pat just asked him straight up, all right, where is it trending? What's going on as far as that number 2 overall pick in the Washington Commanders?
It's tracking towards Jayden Daniels, which it has been.
Okay.
The signs point to Jayden Daniels, which they do.
Okay.
And the Commanders are going through it after this week when, again, I think it's a situation where from the outset, Jayden Daniels had an interest in being other places. He just has. Now the interest is, okay, what do the Commanders do about that? Do they, like, there have been plenty of players who have wanted to play elsewhere, and teams don't care, and they just do what they do. Or if there's a team that wants him, i.e. a team that used to essentially have a coach that worked him in college, then they have to trade for him. So what do they want to do?
So there's Schefter right there with his report talking about, what's going on. And again, this really broke on Friday while I was on Carlin vs. Joe on ESPN Radio. And I promise you, Raider Nation, I've been doing ESPN Radio now for a little while, right? Almost a full year as a full-time guy. And I don't think we've ever had a day, even the day that Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler were let go from their positions on Halloween night, I don't think we've ever spent a full hour just basically talking Raiders. But based off that soundbite right there, we just kind of started diving into the conversation about the Raiders. And obviously Adam Schefter let it be known that Jayden Daniels hasn't wanted to be a Commander or has basically wanted to play somewhere else. And then you hear what he says about the coach that worked with them in college. I mean, look, tell me that you're talking about the Raiders without telling me that you're talking about the Raiders. That's basically the answer to that right there. And look, I'm not saying that means that the Raiders are going to find a way to get Jayden Daniels, but I'll tell you right now, less than a week away from the start of the NFL draft, I feel like that there's at least a chance, right? I don't want to put all my eggs in that basket and say that that's going to happen. I think that'd be kind of fool's gold. I wouldn't want to, be that guy, but I do think that there's a slight chance that the Raiders are able to pull a rabbit out the hat and, possibly land Jayden Daniels in the draft, even though it's for the longest looked like it's pretty much set in stone that that's not going to happen. Now, Tom Telesco, the Raiders GM, he's actually going to be speaking with the media. I'm not going to be in attendance, but he'll be speaking with the media this morning around 10 o'clock at the Intermountain Health Performance Center. So obviously we'll get some good sound bites from that. I will get the sound from it. I'll be able to get a copy of it, even though I'm not in attendance. Again, I had to fly out to Detroit early, but this will be one of the few times to be able to talk with Tommy T. We don't talk to him very often, but it'll be all about philosophies, what he's thinking, trading up, trading back. What would he do? What wouldn't he do? If there's anything that's too much, like if there's too much draft capital to give up for a starting quarterback. And I remember I asked him that at the combine. He said, "Well, I'm sure there is, right? I mean, but he didn't say what it was, right?" And I probably worded it incorrectly. I should have asked it a little bit differently, so I got an actual good answer from him. But it's going to be, I want to hear what Tommy T has to say. So that's going to happen today, 10 a.m. Pacific time. You'll hear from the Raiders GM, Tom Telesco. I'm sure guys like Vinny Bonsignore, Tashawn Reed, Paul Gutierrez will all ask him good questions about, just kind of the philosophy heading into Thursday and what they could do. But that little report right there from Schefter, and that was only, 35 seconds of it. It was really his whole appearance that was on the Pat McAfee show. And so it really was like 2 or 3 minutes that you could have broken down. But I thought that was the good part right there, the nuts and bolts of it, 35 seconds that really lets you know that there's a little bit of smoke around Jayden Daniels and the Raiders, Antonio Pierce, all that good stuff. So like I said, when I think that there's smoke, when I see smoke, I believe that there's fire following around. So again, not saying that it's going to happen. I'm not trying to, blow smoke up your backside and get you all fired up and saying that the Raiders are going to land Jayden Daniels. But I'll tell you, man, all weekend long, just a part of me felt like, you know what? There's a chance that this actually happens. There's a chance that Jayden Daniels is the Raiders quarterback when it's all said and done. Again, it might be a small chance, but what do they say? You're saying there's a chance. I do believe there's a slight chance. That could be me being foolish. I don't think so. I do think that there's a slight chance that it could end up happening sooner rather than later. They can make a trade to number 3 as early as today, or they can make a trade, on draft day, and that'll all, play a part in it. But I'll tell you right now, I'm here for it. I'm here in Detroit. I'm excited. I'm fired up. Travel was good. So, hey, if the travel's good, I'm good. It's when the travel's bad is when I'm bad. So that's what I got for you for segment number 1. Just a little bit of news and notes collected over the weekend. Coming up in segment number 2. What direction should the Raiders be focusing on? What direction should they be going? What's their A, B, and C plan? What should that be for Thursday? Well, we'll talk about it coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. And it's playoff time in the NBA and the NHL. I don't know if you saw NBA action over the weekend, saw what the Knicks were able to do, saw what the Minnesota Timberwolves. You want to talk about a team that is kind of like my dark horse, the Ant-Man, man, Anthony Edwards. He is my guy. He said the other day, talking to Malika Andrews from ESPN, that in 2 to 3 years, he feels like he's going to be the best player in the NBA. I agree with him 100%. Love what Ant-Man could do. He's going up against the Phoenix Suns. Kevin Durant's his favorite player. And, well, he took him out to the woodshed, or he took the Suns out to the woodshed over the weekend and handled their business. So playoff time in the NBA is going. The Saturday games I thought was a lot better than the Sunday games. NHL action is going on. Baseball's in full swing. FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots, home runs, slam dunks, three-pointers, all in the app that's safe, secure, and it's easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, it's America's #1 sportsbook. I also want to tell you about Monopoly Go. And I know we've all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime. The scoreboard is not looking good at all. You're feeling low, not sure you or your team could pull out a win. That's when you got to dig deep. You got to lift up your head and say to yourself, Q or self, time to get back in the game. pull off some bank heists and take as much of the friends' money as you possibly can. That's right. What am I talking about? The smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go. Lets you compete with your friends and get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone. Anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards that compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. You can play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards, making your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. I told Vegas Jess that I was going to do that to his house. He wasn't a big fan of that. So now I got to watch out for a wrecking ball headed my way. Charge other players rent for your iconic properties and a whole lot more. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get out there. Put on your game face and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Gave you the latest little report from Adam Schefter in segment number 1 about not really having a 100% idea exactly who's going to go number 2 as far as the quarterback goes. Like he said, it's trending towards Jayden Daniels, but nothing is set in stone. So what are the directions the Raiders should be locked in for, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to Thursday? And look, I threw out a bunch of different scenarios, and, a lot of these different scenarios I throw out there, I'm like, man, I'd be okay with that. Man, I'd be okay with that. Yeah, I'd be cool with that too, because there are a lot of good scenarios that could come out of this on Thursday. I really think that the Raiders have to try. I have to try to mess this up, right? I mean, there's so many different ways they can go, and I think they can come out with a really good player or a couple good players by the time round 1 is over on Thursday. But let's just go ahead and throw out the different scenarios, and I'll let you know what I'm focused in on. First and foremost, you could trade up for Jayden Daniels, trade up to number 3, try to get Jayden Daniels to use his leverage. Maybe trade up to number 2, but Adam Peters for the Commanders really doesn't sound like he's trying to move out of that number 2 spot. So it sounds like trade up to number 3 with Patriots would be the way to go, and then have Jayden Daniels say, yeah, I'm not playing for you guys. I want to play for them. Don't draft me, or just pull Eli, draft me, but I'm not going to sign here. Trade me to that team right there. That's 1A. But that's a tough one, right? That's a lot of moving parts that have to come through for you. That would be a very tall task to pull off. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's a tall task to pull off. The next one, top flight offensive tackle. You can go Fuaga, you can go Latham, you can go Guyton. All 3 of those guys, I think if you come out of the first round with one of those, really good options, right? I mean, because you got that right tackle spot. I feel like all 3 of those guys, Fuaga out of Oregon State, Latham out of Alabama, and Guyton out of Oklahoma, all 3 of those guys are true right tackles. And I think that's what the Raiders should focus in on. Not a guy that's going to kick to the right side, but a guy that knows the right side, is going to come in day 1 and hold that down. So that's an option that the Raiders have. Top flight cornerback, either Terrion Arnold, Quinyon Mitchell. Those are the top 2 guys that I'm looking at. And I don't even think I really have to go into deep detail about that. I mean, Antonio Pierce himself has said that he wants to get an alpha dog to go across from Jack Jones and Nate Hobbs. Quinyon Mitchell and Terrion Arnold are both that. I saw some people reacting to my pick at number 13. It was like, oh, of course, Q went with the defensive back. It's what he always does, which is not wrong. But I also based that off of the relationship that AP has with Terrion Arnold, the way that they interacted at the combine that I was at, and also the way they interacted at Terrion Arnold's pro day. So it's not like I just grabbed it on my backside and said, oh, it's a defensive back. Let me go pick him. No, he's an alpha dog, which, again, something that Antonio Pierce said that he wanted across from Jack Jones and Nate Hobbs. And if you get 3 bloodthirsty Pirates like that in the secondary, all of a sudden you're really cooking with grease and you're feeling good about the secondary. Of course, you still got to address other positions, but you'd feel really good about that. Obviously, a quarterback. They can go Michael Penix. They can go Bo Nix, whatever the case may be, if they just stick and pick at 13 and not find a way to trade up. I think that's, a no-brainer. A lot of people want to see the Raiders come out of this draft with Michael Penix in the first round just because they don't want to let them take the chance of somebody else potentially picking them up. And then the final option that they have there at 13, in my opinion, is drafting Byron Murphy, the big defensive tackle out of Texas. It's not a need, right? But it's a luxury. But man, that would be it. You want to talk about dudes. You want to talk about bloodthirsty Pirates. That's the absolute definition of a bloodthirsty pirate. You look that up in the dictionary. Well, I don't think we use those anymore. You Google bloodthirsty pirate, Byron Murphy's picture is going to pop up. So right there, that's 5 great options that the Raiders have. I mean, they're in one of those positions. I say it all the time, like a triple threat stance, right? They can go in, they can zig, they can zag, they can dig, they can duck, they can dodge, they can, There's so many different things that they can do in that position that, they should not come out of round 1 without feeling really good about themselves. But where would I focus? My first focus is definitely going to be exhaust every option to try to trade up for Jayden Daniels. Like I'm working the phones. I'm on the phones right now. If I'm Tom Telesco, the only time I'm getting off the phone is when I got to have that presser at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Just the kind of the pre-draft press conference from Tom Telesco at the Intermountain Health Performance Center. Besides that, I'm back on the phones. I'm working those phones. I'm grinding. I'm trying to negotiate as much as possible. And even if it feels a little rich, 3 first-round picks. Okay, that's fine. It's a pick swap of this year. 2 more first-round picks, and adding a little bit extra on it, a third, a second. So be it. I'm okay with that. I mean, I can go through the laundry list of draft picks that the Raiders have had and in their possession and have squandered them off anyway. So if you can go get that top-flight quarterback that you've been looking for, that guy that you feel like a difference maker, go do it. I wouldn't be mad at whatever the results are if you go get him. But outside of that, let's say that didn't work. So that, again, was option 1A. I'm just going to give you one more option. See, I'm even stuck there. One more. I'm going to go, you know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to double down with what I did on Locked On Mock Draft. I'm going to go with only 2 options. The first one I already rolled out, trying to do everything it could to go trade for Jayden Daniels. Outside of that, I'm taking the top corner off the board. I really am. I know that this draft is deep in offensive tackles. I know that this draft is deep in corners, but I think these dudes are difference makers. Arnold and Mitchell are both difference makers. They're guys that can get their hands on the ball and take the ball back. And how did the Raiders beat the Chiefs last year on Christmas? Takeaways, right? They scored 14 points off defense. The Raiders, before this last year, weren't used to getting too many takeaways. Now they're starting to get into a habit and starting to get into a rhythm of taking the ball away and really having some top flight defensive play. So I think you got to keep that going. I know Fuaga is man, he's sitting right there, and that's a hell of a pick. Latham would be a hell of a pick. Guyton would be a hell of a pick. But I just think that you have some options there, but you don't have a Terrion Arnold or a Quinyon Mitchell. You don't have those options too much later. So I'm going to double down and stick with my pick that I made at 13 on the Locked On mock draft and think that, Terrion Arnold, if he's there, go get him, right? Just don't overthink it. I think the dude's an alpha dog, and he'll just make that secondary that much more nasty. And with that personality he has, again, that's a lot of it. The personality that he has, the way that he has an approach, the way that he, kind of has that confidence, has borderline cockiness. I think that's just something that this Raiders team needs. They need that kind of guy. They have it in Jack Jones. Can you imagine that Raider locker room with Jack Jones, Terrion Arnold, and Nate Hobbs? All locker room next to each other, all trying to outcompete against each other. Now you're all of a sudden you're talking about, some of the great Raider duos and tandems that they had in the secondary for years, years and years and years. And I'm not going to put Lester Hayes and Mike Haynes out there because those are Hall of Famers. And of course, Lester Hayes should be a Hall of Famer. I'm not going to put that on them. But, man, that would be one hell of a duo, kind of like C. Wood and Eric Allen. Remember when those 2 guys were manning the corners for the Raiders? And look, I think EA should be a Hall of Famer as well. We know C. Wood's there, but the Raiders have had some, even going back to Terry McDaniel and Albert Lewis. Remember them when they were really good before they got old? It happens. You're going to get old. They were even a really good duo, right? The Raiders haven't had those 2 outside guys that were alphas in a really long time. That would help you get back to it. So that's what I'm going to stick at. Option 1A is always go get the quarterback. Go get your quarterback, Jayden Daniels. If you can't go get that quarterback for whatever reason, option B, in my opinion, what I'm focusing on is getting that top flight corner, either Terrion Arnold or Quinyon Mitchell. And look, if I can trade back into the back end of round 1 and pick up Michael Penix or pick up an offensive tackle like a Guyton. Like I said, if you could trade back into the back end of round 1 and pick up Guyton, great. If you could pick up Michael Penix, great. You just take. I think you could take that chance though. Again, the quarterbacks that you have in the mix right now allow you to have that option. They're not guys that can't win games. They're guys that have won games. And even Gardner Minshew got the Colts right there on the doorstep of the playoffs in 2023. So with the defense that the Raiders have and a run game that I expect them to really be strong and solid, if you get the even better defense, then you can win some games. So those are the two options that I'm going to go with. I mean, there was a bunch of different ones. None of those are wrong. So if you say, Q, you're wrong, go with the offensive tackle, guess what? You're not wrong. Right? I'm not going to fight you on it. I'm not going to get upset and angry and be like, oh, you're crazy. No, those are great options. That's why I think that the Raiders are in a great position. But the number one focus for Tom Telesco and company, in my opinion, should go get Jayden Daniels. Do whatever it takes to go get Jayden Daniels, especially while it's still kind of up in the air, as no one really knows who Washington is going to take at number 2 for the quarterback. If they take Drake May, it is on and popping. If they take Drake May, can you imagine how crazy it's going to be on draft day where we're sitting there at the NFL draft? You imagine what the phones will be like with the Raiders trying to be on the phone with the New England Patriots. I can see it. And I would love for it to happen. I know that Jayden Daniels is going to be here. I'm going to talk to him on Wednesday. I'd love to talk to him on Thursday following the draft. If not, I know Terrion Arnold is a guy that's here. So I'd love to talk to him as well. J.C. Latham is a guy who's here. Would love to talk to him. Whoever it is, I'm hoping that I get him not only before the draft, but I get him after the draft to talk about them being a member of the Las Vegas Raiders. So that's what I got for you for segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. What do you think? Final week. Well, it's not even a week, not even full week here. Final few days before the NFL gets started, our draft gets started on Thursday. Where do you think the Raiders' focus should be? Give me your top 2. That's it. Don't give me 5. Give me your top 2 of what you think the Raiders should be locked in on as this week gets going. 707-654-4693. Your calls and texts will come up in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about Game Time. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. Great last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. You can use the app feature. You can customize your spot. You can get all kind of last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, easy to find and buy MLB tickets. And for every kind of event in your area, really doesn't matter what it is. They have priority seating. They have flash deals, all-in prices. The seat views, I think, is really great. Get a view for your seat in the app before you buy it so you know exactly what to expect when you show up. And, of course, Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticket industry. Right now, what you need to do is take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your time to shine. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things out with Giovanni from San Diego. He's calling to talk about a player he thinks is being overlooked, and he's already on the Raiders roster. Here he is, Giovanni from San Diego.
Hey, Q. This is Giovanni. I'm from San Diego. Just giving you a call here. I want to discuss a player that I feel like is really undervalued and no one's talking about on the O-line, and that's Dalton Wagner. I feel like he could really be our starting right tackle next year. He's 6'8", 320 pounds. PFF had him rated as, believe the best rookie tackle last year during preseason until we stashed him on the IR. So I just want to get your thoughts on him. I feel like no one's talking about Dalton Wagner and that he could actually end up being our starting right tackle. Love the show, Q. Keep up the good work, and hopefully we trade up for Jayden Daniels. Have a good one, man.
Gio, thanks for the call. Appreciate you, my man. Dalton Wagner. That's a guy that the previous staff was really high on. He injured himself in camp, so he was lost for the season, put on IR. So they didn't really stash him on IR. They just had to put him on IR because he was injured. And I remember they were pretty upset about it when it happened. Josh McDaniels was really kind of looking forward to what Dalton Wagner could bring to the table. But the problem is with him, that's his history. He's had a lot of injuries. That's what hurt him a lot at Arkansas, was that he was banged up quite a bit. Look, he's in the mix. He's going to compete. He's listed right now on the depth chart, which means nothing, behind Thayer Munford at the right tackle spot. He's going to, again, have an opportunity to compete, but he's got to find a way to stay healthy. They got to find out what they're going to do with Thayer Munford. I mean, there's a few options on the roster, but I think that we all know that the Raiders need a guy who could really step up at some point and solidify that right tackle spot. It's been such a carousel, such a rotating door for so long. They at some point need to get a guy that can just hold that spot down for the next 10 years. They need to find their right side Colton Miller. Straight up. They just need to find their Colton Miller that they can put on the right side and just let him sit there and know that he's going to hold it down. I don't know when that's going to be. And depending on what they do with the quarterback position, if they go get Michael Penix, obviously that's even more of a need, right? If they decide that Michael Penix is their quarterback, in fact, then that right tackle spot has to, and I say that in all caps, like I'm screaming it at you, has to be solidified. Gio, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you, my man. Up next, got a text from Ghost in the 804. Hey, Q. Ghost here from the 804 in Richmond, Virginia. First of all, love your show. Thanks for all that you do for the nation. I'd love to hear, outside of he isn't mobile, why Aiden O'Connell's being written off as a starter for the Silver and Black. Despite his starting last year under the worst circumstances, not having a full season, including preseason, he did pretty well. So much so that Sports Illustrated has said that in this year's draft, he'd be a first rounder. Why is the nation so divided on this guy? That's Ghost in the 804. Thanks for the text. I appreciate you, my man. And first of all, I understand that Sports Illustrated that said that there was executives that say Aiden O'Connell will be a first-round pick. He's not. He's not. I don't know why they would write that. I don't know who would say that. I really don't. Aiden O'Connell's not a first-round pick. That doesn't mean he's a bad quarterback, and by no means am I writing him off. I just think that there's having good, and then there's wanting to have great. And this is where I've been the whole time. I think that Aiden O'Connell is good. I think Gardner Minshew is good, but I think that the Raiders need great. And the reason I think that they need great is because they're competing with Mahomes. They're competing with Herbert. They're competing with Burrow. They're competing with Allen. They're competing with Lamar. They're competing with Tua. You know what I mean? Like, the AFC is a dog. I mean, it's just straight up, right? The AFC is a dog. And I just think that, yes, the Raiders beat the Chiefs on Christmas in Kansas City, but that was the defense scored 14 points, right? And I do believe that Aiden O'Connell is going to be better in year two. I mean, naturally, your maturation is you're supposed to be better. I just think that you can have good, but you need great. And I think that that's okay. It's okay to want great, right? It's just like our jobs, just like when I got my foot in the door. Yeah, that was good, but I wanted great. I wanted more. So you work and you try to get to be great, right? You try to get greatness. I think that to get great, you have to get a quarterback that has the great, the great traits in him. Aiden O'Connell, again, good dude. Gardner Minshew, I think, good dude. Good players, but I think if you're saying that you're going to compete every single Sunday, every single Monday, every single Thursday with Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, more likely than not, you're going to feel like that your quarterback is not the best quarterback on the field. At some point, you want your quarterback to be the best quarterback on the field. That's all. So for me, I'm not writing them off. I don't think that Raider Nation is writing them off. I just think the Raider Nation wants a little bit better. So he's going to have a chance to compete. Antonio Pierce said that to us at the Combine. Right now, Aiden O'Connell is our starter. He said that. He has to compete to hold on to that job, but he's our starter. There's nothing wrong with that. If he goes out there and earns it during training camp, cool. So be it. Job well done, right? Just leave it at that. But if he doesn't, then you've got options there, especially an option like a Jayden Daniels, who I think takes your game to a whole nother level. But thanks so much for that text, my man. I definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a call from John in Oakland. He's calling to talk about what he wants to see the Raiders do and why. Here he is, John in Oakland.
Hey, Q, what's up? This is John in Oakland. Man, I'm here to say I don't care about that draft capital stuff. I would give up 5 first-round picks to get a Patrick Mahomes, a Joe Burrow, heck, even a Jordan Love. Hey, tackles, cornerbacks, they don't win Super Bowls. Quarterbacks do. People talk about not wanting to give up draft capital and mortgage the future. What is our future? We ain't won in 20 years doing what we've been doing. So clearly that doesn't work. If we got to go up and get a quarterback, go do it. I don't care how many picks it takes. I don't care about the future. It's been 20 years. And if it doesn't work out, you know what? We just go back to being the same Raiders we've been, which clearly everybody is okay with because you're still fans. So go up, get your quarterback, make it happen. I don't care how many picks it takes because watching the same product is not getting us anywhere. That's all I got, Q, man. This is John in Oakland. I'm out.
John, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. And, that might be what it boils down to. At the end of the day, been trying to do it, one way for so long, it's just not working, right? So let's not try and let's not give another try to another effort, right? Try to go in a different direction. I mean, that's the thing. Like, people talk about all the draft capital. Don't give it this much. Don't give it that much. The Raiders have given up a lot of draft capital just on wasted picks, right? I mean, think about that. Raiders have given up a ton of draft capital on wasted picks, guys that didn't pan out, right? And, obviously Cleve Farrell is part of that, but I don't even hold that against him. He was just selected number 4 overall, which was way too high for where he should have gone. But Damon Arnett was a joke. Jonathan Abram clearly turned out to be a joke. Alex Leatherwood was a joke, right? I mean, those are just a handful right there. Ruggs was a whole nother situation. But, I mean, you have all that draft capital. You have all that assets. You go and trade the best player that you had in a long time at Khalil Mack and say, oh, man, all these 5 first-round picks, man, this team's going to turn everything around. And what do they have to show for it? Like, right now, nothing. Josh Jacobs is in Green Bay. The best thing they got out of that trade, right? Even their extra 2s, right? All their picks that really panned out in the last handful of years have all been later-round picks, 4th-round picks, 5th-round picks. Guys like that. Like a Max Crosby, a Hunter Renfrow when he was on the squad, Nate Hobbs, guys like that. I mean, those were all later round picks. The Raiders just have not been able to do anything with their picks anyway. So that's why I'm not really worried about it. Hey, and they've got a roster that I believe is better than a lot of people think. A lot of people nationally, they don't have a very good roster. I think that's BS. I think they have a good roster. There's a few holes, sure. But I think the Raiders have a very competitive roster right now that, as I've said 1,000 times, could go out and compete on Sunday if they had to. They can go out, compete on Sunday and win, in my opinion. But, John, thanks so much for that call. Do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from a North Texas Raider. Says, what's up, Q? It's North Texas Raider. I apologize. I know I've sent you a few messages already this weekend, but I just had a last thought. One more very acceptable outcome for me would be for the team to stay put and draft Newton at 13. That, for me, would be instantly put one of our position groups in the top unit in the league, or at least in the top 3 discussion, and that's the sort of thing that wins Super Bowls. As Coach AP can attest, as always, love what you do for the nation. North Texas Raider out. That's a thought right there. That's a thought. Newton, that would be. I mean, look, that would be a guy that solidifies that defensive tackle room. That would make it that much bigger. I think Byron Murphy is the better of the defensive tackles. I definitely do. So, and I don't think he'll be off the board yet at 13. So I think that would be the direction that they go if they're going to go in that order. But, maybe if they were having to trade back for some reason, and then they got Newton a little bit later on, he's definitely a bona fide top flight defensive tackle. And there's not too many in this class. So Newton could be a guy I see, but I think that if you're going to go defensive tackle and you're going to go at 13, you're going to go with Murphy. I think Murphy he's just that much better than everybody. So it's a thought. And I mentioned earlier in segment number 2, there's a bunch of different outcomes that the Raiders could have that aren't bad outcomes, right? They just got to make sure that they make it happen. So thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. Got time for a couple more. We'll get this call from Jackson in Utah. He's calling to share his thoughts on what he feels like he wants the Raiders to do come Thursday. Here he is, Jackson in Utah.
Hey, Q, it's Jackson from Utah. I think I got what I want. I think I know what I want for the draft. I've listened to you the last couple months, and I've gone far left to far right to I don't know. So I think my final say is if we can get Jayden Daniels for 3 first-round picks, one of them being this year's pick swap, and then a couple thirds or whatever, no players, just a couple extra picks, I'm for that. I think we can build around that through free agency and down the road get the O-line and cornerbacks built up. If it costs any more, I think we bail. I think we go for the building around our quarterbacks. I would do O-line at 13, the guy out of Oregon, and then try to trade up back into the first, early second for Penix. And if we can't get that, then that's fine. I like the idea of Gardner and O'Connell. I think there's some upside to them. Penix has some upside, obviously. It's fun watching him play. He has a cannon for an arm. But there's also some downside. So I think there's similar pros and cons to having Gardner or AOC play where, they could be solid quarterbacks, similar to Derek Carr. They get the job done. Maybe they cause some frustration in clutch times. But hopefully we'll have a better team to have them in a better situation. So that's where I lean. Not do Penix at 13. Let's just ride it out with the quarterbacks we have and get a stud O-lineman or a cornerback, and then continue to build. But I believe in the Raiders. In years past, it's been rough watching the draft. I pray, if anything, we don't go off the script and do something stupid. We can stick to these guys that I know their names. I'm not Googling them after the game, after the draft. As long as we don't do that, I'm happy. All right. Thank you. Just win, baby.
Jackson, thanks so much for the call. I appreciate you. And I mean, again, I said it in segment 2. I think it should be a full court press on Jayden Daniels. Find a way to get him. Make Washington say no. Make the Patriots say no. Make the Washington Commanders draft him. Whatever the case may be, right? Do everything you can do to try to go get that guy. If it doesn't work out, okay, fine. Get you an impact player at 13, whether that's Murphy, whether that's Arnold, whether that's Mitchell, whether you feel like you got to go get Fuaga, Latham, go get Guyton. There's so many options, and a lot of those dudes I just rattled off will be there at 13 because of the quarterbacks that are wanted. Not to mention the wide receivers that are going to be selected and other offensive tackles that are going to be selected. Like, there's going to be some really good players available at 13 because of everything I just rattled off. So, again, the Raiders almost have to try to screw this up come Thursday. Now, I say that right now. I'm crossing my fingers like, man, please don't let me eat those words, because Raider Nation 1 will never, ever let me forget it. Remember you said that the Raiders had to try to screw it up. Well, I guess they tried to screw it up. Like, I can hear that coming down the pipeline right now, so don't want to hear that. But, Jackson, thanks so much for the call. I do appreciate you. Let's close things out with a text from Raider Duck. It says, hey, Q, Raider Duck, tapping in again, doing some of my own personal deep dives on the draft. All this buzz about Jayden not wanting to play for Washington could be good news for us. Hopefully we can get him. But I already know you'll be covering that like a blanket. So I want to stop and go way deep into the draft. I mean, like last couple rounds deep. I'm a Ducks fan, but even I don't like Anthony Brown. And I think the Raiders need to get Davius Richard, the FCS HBCU school, North Carolina Eagles, maybe in the 7th or undrafted free agent. He's a prototypical quarterback with a lot of developmental upside. Unlike Brown, I'm all about propping up HBCU players in schools. This dude deserves to be in the quarterback room and compete for a roster spot. That's all I got for now, Q. Much love. Sent your way, and go Raiders. That's from Raider Duck. And I'll tell you, you got me on that one. You did. You got me on that one. I was not prepared for you to pull out Davius Richard. I gotta make sure I'm even saying his name right. I'll have to do a little bit of research. I'll have to deep dive into the beast. Dane Brugler's the beast in the Athletic. See if he's got him highlighted. If not, kind of go and do a little bit of research on him as well. But you're putting me up on game, and I appreciate that. Put me up on game. Maybe someone to look out for in the later rounds. And I like those later round gems, guys that a lot of people aren't talking about. And then all of a sudden you hear that name pop up, like, man, that's the dude that Raider Duck was talking about. So thanks so much for that, my man. Like I said, I'll have to go do my research. I didn't have that one prepared, but good stuff. Really good stuff as always. Raider Nation is the best because, well, you're smart. You know exactly what you're talking about. Really good stuff as always. Of course, 707-654-4693. That is the number to get your feedback in on the show. It's this week. We've been talking about for a long time. Finally, at the end of the week, when it's all said and done, when I'm back in Vegas, we'll talk about what happened as opposed to what could happen with the NFL draft. And I'm so here for it. Until tomorrow, Raider Nation, again, live from Detroit. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.